Hello and welcome to Sass Bites. I almost said Shop Talk Show. To Sass Bites. This is your weekly bite of Sass during your lunch break. Typically on Thursdays, but as we're doing interviews and schedules, today we're doing Wednesday. But I am very excited and just feel very fortunate to have Jina Bolton with us here today. She is a, I'm jumping all over the place here. All right. She is a senior product designer now at Salesforce. She has a Bachelor's of Fine Arts from Memphis College of Art, working towards her MFA, probably like a 10 or 20-year plan, right?
Yeah, something like that.
She leads up Team Sass Design, and we're going to talk about some of the work they did for the Sass website here in a little bit. Also helping out with the Suzy grid framework, and she has a fun little side project that I really like that's called Art in My Coffee. So hello, Gina, and thanks for coming.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm super glad you're able to make it. I asked you like late last night. Actually flew in from DC when I found out that our guest for tomorrow was sick and wasn't able to come, or for Thursday, and you graciously stepped up and came in real quick. And speaking of sick, we don't have we usually have Kit with us here, helping out to co-host this, and she's also under the weather. So it's just it's one of those weeks. But I am really glad to have you on. I think all the listeners are pretty excited to hear from you as well. So let's jump into it. The first thing I'm asking everyone here on this series is, how did you get into Sass? What's your like aha moment, or your conversion story, as it will be?
Okay. Well, I have to admit, I was very reluctant at first. I was one of those designers that thought I didn't need Sass because I write perfect CSS. I don't need Sass. And actually, to backtrack a little bit, when I was at Crush and Lovely, we did a lot of agency work. There was one project where I had to use less, and the reason we wanted to use less for it is we were doing HTML-based charts and graphs, and we wanted to be able to generate our colors like on the fly very quickly. So we were experimenting with less. And I thought that part was pretty cool, but I still wasn't really sold on it. It wasn't until I went to go work at Engine Yard, so you have Engine Yard to blame. They basically
Or think.
or think. They told me if I was going to be writing CSS, I would have to use Sass because that's what they use, and they were using the original syntax. So reluctantly, I started using it, and then within about a week, I was hooked. Like, I actually would find myself accidentally trying to write vanilla Sass or vanilla CSS as Sass, and that's when I realized, okay, I guess I'm into this. And I was already doing talks on like CSS workflow, so I started injecting a little bit of Sass in my talks, and then once I got like super into it, I just kind of was like, all right, this is my thing. This is what I'm gonna be into. And yeah, I'm super stoked about Sass. I think it's done a lot of good for my workflow, and the community is like crazy awesome right now.
Very awesome.
Yeah.
And speaking of the community and how awesome they are, you were able to go to Camp Sass, right?
Yeah, actually, I'm drinking coffee from my Sass mug right now.
Hampton, if you're listening, I need one of those mugs, please.
They're pretty cool.
That's quite nice. That is good swag for us Sass users. We definitely need that coffee. So what do you think of it? Any highlights or anything you took out of the event?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. There was just good talk after good talk after good talk, and I liked that it was a mix. It wasn't all just Sass. Divya gave a great talk about GPU and performance, and Claudina's talk was more around like how to like create a better world through like the Sass community. And it wasn't just about the Sass community, but it was just like, with the tools that we're using, like how to just make the web a better place. And that was like really inspiring. And I always enjoy watching Eric and Chris talk about what they do because they're amazing. And I didn't actually know that there was someone from Salesforce speaking. His name's Cliff Seal, and he talked about groupthink and how that affects like usability, and that just like blew my mind.
Can you give me like a 20-second of like what groupthink is?
So it's an example he started out with is like if you have a group of people in a room and you might ask them, I forgot the exact question, but let's say you ask a question and somebody in the room knows the answer, but everyone else in the room starts saying a different answer. The person that knows the right answer may change their answer because everyone else in the room is
Yeah,
saying
they
the wrong
might
answer.
start second guessing whether they're right or not.
Yeah, and sometimes it can be a bad thing, but he was talking about how, you know, there are ways it can impact like usability and user experience as well. And I actually I hope he has the slides up somewhere because I feel like I need to like go through it again.
Actually, I think in our last week's show notes, I think we had some links to the slides in there.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that one is available or not, but we should
Yeah.
try and track that down. Fun. So, any crazy zany after party stories that you can't share or anything like that?
I don't know about not being able to share. I do know the open bar situation I took advantage of. There was a very expensive whiskey that they had, and I was like, I'll have one of those.
Do you recall what it was as a
Yeah, it
purveyor
was
of whiskeys myself?
yeah, it was the Angel's Envy cask strength, and Angel's Envy is like one of my favorite bourbons. It's like finished in port barrels, and when
Nice.
I saw they had cask strength, I was like, don't mind if I do. Yeah,
Is that like an American? Is that like Kentucky whiskey
yeah,
or do you know?
Kentucky.
Okay, very cool. And I actually was at CSS DevConf this last year, and they had an amazing whiskey bar, like Texas whiskeys and Canadian whiskeys and like Japanese whiskeys. It was whiskey heaven. It was pretty wonderful. So
Yeah,
CSS DevConf, if you're listening, make sure there's another whiskey bar down in New Orleans.
exactly. And I didn't feel that guilty because afterwards Hampton was saying, we still have money on the tab, please drink. I was like, cool.
Make it a double this time.
Yeah.
Great. So you went to Memphis College of Art for your BFA, and you're working on your master's. There's a bunch of questions that come up here, but like for one, so why are you going after your master's? What was the impetus for making that decision?
That's because I want to teach, and not necessarily right now, but I know down the road when I kind of want to work a little bit less, I want to teach like in a college setting, and I know a lot of art schools require a master's of fine arts or an equivalent degree to do so, and so I figured, might as well do it now so I don't have to deal with it later.
Exactly. And that segues perfectly into the next question then of how do you feel that experience was? Do you see that it was valuable, the going to education? Because a lot of us obviously don't go through the traditional educational channels and just get into the job. So what do you feel education brought to you in your career, and what are you hoping to bring to the students that you teach?
So I'm going to say this carefully. I don't want to burn any bridges because I am still going for my master's. But just so you know, I've completed all my classes. I just have to finish my thesis.
Oh,
And,
okay.
I've been taking a break on that because I want to focus on work. But yeah, so I definitely got value out of it. But I honestly don't know that I really needed to do that because, like, while I do know a lot of universities and art schools require that, there's a lot of new schools coming out that don't. You've got the new Unicorn Institute that's coming out, and as far as I could tell, like, as long as you do good work and you have good experience, you could work at a place like that without having to have this long education background.
Exactly.
So between that and like my massive amount of student loans that I own, I'm wondering if I maybe made a bad choice. But again, like I said, I did learn a lot, and you don't just learn a lot about like the actual job, but you also learn a lot about just like your own personal work ethic and your own workflow. I was going part-time while also working full-time, so that was pretty crazy.
Yeah, certainly. I
Yeah.
feel the same way. I have a degree in audio production, which obviously doesn't directly apply very well, but I know there's a lot of things that that correlate, or things I learned there that I was able to use in my current work, or just again, that work ethic and everything
Yeah.
you're speaking of. So
Yeah, and it did introduce me to some things I wasn't really doing. Like, at the grad school I went to has a usability lab, and they put a lot of emphasis on doing user testing, and not just through like digital testing a digital app, but also like paper prototyping and card sorting and things like that. And even though I like knew about all these techniques, I never really like was applying them. And in that program, like they force you to apply it. And then once I had gone through that process and realized it is valuable, then I started introducing it into my own personal workflow. So I did get value out of it.
There you go. You got your money's worth.
Yeah.
Every month you write that check, you're like, this is it was for something.
Yes.
So speaking of writing that check and where it comes from, I'm horrible at segues today. All right, Salesforce. So okay, so to run this history back, you actually were with Do.com before, or that was part of Salesforce, and they were before that a company called, was it Manymoon? Was that right? Yes. I thought that was the history because I was actually a Manymoon user.
Oh, really?
Many moons ago. Yeah, I know. So yeah, it was a huge. That was probably one of my first. When I was first getting into web and looking for some kind of like just real basic project management. And that was the first one I stumbled into, and so I kind of had that whole like it turned into Go, and then I ran into you and like, oh hey, you're working at Go, and like so yeah, that's just long weird connected past. So. With that aside, so what do you do at Salesforce as the senior product designer?
So Salesforce UX is a really big team of designers, and we're still growing. By the way, we're hiring big time. So, I really love the role that I have on my team. So the team I'm on, we call ourselves a systems team. Our name, we've kind of had a couple different names, but that's the name we're calling ourselves right now. And so we focus a lot on the patterns and the style guide and working like collaboratively with all the other UX teams to just kind of, make sure everything is kind of following a consistent pattern. And we also work a lot with the prototyping team to have our prototype be sort of like a living spec. Because we have, an Android team, we have an iOS team, we have the web team, and so the prototype that we help build and work on acts as a spec. And so for interactions, visual design, all that stuff, rather than doing a bunch of red lines, we prefer to actually have something living that you can look at and, use.
and red lines for the non-initiated are?
Yeah, so that's when you take a Photoshop comp and draw a bunch of red lines saying this is 12 pixels, this is 14 pixels, this is 20 pixels, which nobody likes to do. And, I had to do some yesterday. It still has to happen occasionally, but we're working towards minimizing that as much as possible, and I find a lot of joy in that.
It's so much nicer being able to click on something and inspect and go, oh, it's 12 pixels with 14 pixels margin bottom. A lot easier than opening Photoshop and like trying to draw a square and figure out what that margin is supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I certainly understand that. So you deal a lot with the, like you said, the style guides. I think we're going to take a look at that here in a little bit. So you're working on like creating the systems that the people use to create the products then, right?
Yeah, and so like we have a range of skills on our team. Some people are more visual design skilled, and some are more like front end skilled. Some are all like can do everything. We have one guy on our team that can really do everything: animation, like prototyping, like all the things. And so like because of that, like we're able to kind of look at systems for interaction patterns. For visual design systems, our front end system, it's basically just like looking for patterns and like documenting them and working with everyone to keep alignment happening. And yeah, it's pretty rad.
That's neat. Yeah. Because when you scale, when you get to something of that size, like most of the teams, I work on larger teams, but they're still just like a dozen people or so, like a single product and everything, and it takes scaling to that size to start getting into trying to solve some of those challenges that you're solving. So it's a very unique and sounds fun. So I see Salesforce UX is the Twitter account, or at Salesforce UX.
Yes.
Where you can just ping Jina directly. That sounds like a very good time.
Yeah,
and speaking of this, is
really exciting time, by the way.
This is just a small one. So you're at Jina on Twitter.
Yes.
You have Gina.me. I was like, obviously stalking you around to get information on you. You have Gina on GitHub. How did you get all these early, like, just ninja in there to get these names, didn't you?
Well, I think it helps having a name spelled slightly different than the typical spelling. Thanks, Dad, for that. Uh, but so I actually wasn't always Gina on Twitter. I've kind of been fickle, and I've had many usernames. I was Boltron at one time, and then I found out there was another Boltron in the industry, so I kind of let him take reins on that name. I was Sushi Monster for a while, and now
That's a good one.
I saw that there was this was years ago when Twitter allowed you to take inactive usernames. There used to be a
They
time
had
you
that
could
at
do
some
that.
point.
Well, you could
I'm
request it if they
extremely
were like,
jealous.
I forgot what the time frame was, but it used to be if they hadn't tweeted or done anything in a length of time, you could request that username. And
Mhm.
I saw, and I didn't even realize this at the time, but I saw there was this Gina that never tweeted. It was like 2 years of not tweeting. And so I direct messaged a friend that worked at Twitter, and I was like, what would be the process to get this name? And she's like, there, I just did it for you. And I was like, oh, thanks.
Sorry to the other Gina out there who just lost her Twitter account.
Yeah, sorry about
You
that.
snooze, you lose.
I mean,
Sorry.
2 years is a long time, but now they don't do that anymore, from what I
I see.
understand. But as for like on Instagram, I was a beta tester, so there you go. And then
Very nice.
I guess on GitHub, I guess just there aren't very many devs with my name because I had I think I was Sushi Monster on there too, and then I just changed my name one day because I realized it was available. And
Mhm.
I've been trying to get my name on everything, but occasionally something, like I was trying to sign up for my Creative Mornings profile, and some other Gina in like Seattle or something grabbed it. It's like, no!
Yeah, I was trying to write the event out, and I put your first name in there, and I was starting to write your second name. I'm like, I don't know if I know how to spell your last name, and so I went to your website. It's nowhere on your website. I go
Yeah,
to like your GitHub account. Nope, it's not there. It took me a long time to track your last name down.
yeah, I kind of like being just Gina.
Just Gina.
Or the emoticon cat.
Yes, exactly. I think both of those work perfectly for your
Yeah,
name. I,
yeah.
I think in some like weird language in the Middle East that actually means Gina. Is that right?
I'm sorry?
Yeah.
Oh,
that emoji character actually means
oh yeah, sure.
yeah.
I'm sure.
Let's
It's
let's
like,
go with that. All right, so moving on. Another thing I love about what you do is you have a meetup down in San Francisco, and I'm actually quite jealous that you came up with a much more creative name than I did for my meetup. So why don't you tell us about how that came about and what you
yeah.
do?
Yeah, so when I was at Do, we were talking about wanting to sponsor and host meetups, and I remember having a couple conversations with Hampton about how there wasn't really an official San Francisco meetup for Sass, and so I was able to convince Do to let me host a Sass meetup there, and they sponsored it, and I feel really, really lucky because I got Hampton as my first speaker. I actually do this thing where I have a 30-minute speaker of somebody who's done like a lot in the SaaS or front end community, and then I try to have a 15-minute speaker of maybe someone that's like either new to the speaking circuit or like has like this cool thing they want to share, and I kind of like having that dynamic. So the person we had as that speaker is Austin Bales, who is the designer I actually worked with at Do, and he talked about using handlebars and Sass to do componentized UI. And then Hampton, talked about libsass and like how Sass came about and all that, and it was really, really awesome. Um, Soon, not like immediately after that, but fairly soon after that was when Do was closing. And so I asked if I could take that meetup with me elsewhere. Oh, by the way, it's called the Mixin.
Yeah, I was going to get to that.
Yeah, I feel pretty proud of that. But yeah, so then the second one I held at Hampton's company at the time, MoveWeb. I think he's moved on from there now. And so we held it at MoveWeb, and I got Chris Epstein to speak at that one. And so I'm
Not
like,
too
I am
bad.
like nailing this. And
It doesn't hurt living in San Francisco, that's for sure.
yeah, like you get some awesome speakers when you live in San Francisco. Um, yeah, and we had Alan Hogan speak at that one as well. And so the next one I held at Engine Yard, which I'm still closely connected with. I have a lot of friends there, and that one was really cool. We had just by coincidence, both speakers kind of talked about performance. We had Divya talking about GPU in the browser and performance, and then I didn't know at the time that this was going to end up becoming one of my coworkers, but Adam Morris, who works with me on my team now, he gave a talk about a little bit of what I'm going to show you, but he kind of also showed some of the other things he's working on around like CSS testing and performance. So that worked out really well. And then for the final one well, not the final one, but the most recent one I had was pretty rad as well. This one we held at Salesforce. That's one of the other things I love about working here is like they were super supportive of all this. But yeah, Eric Suzanne was in town for Camp Sass anyway, and so I got him to speak about Susie. And I had Jessica Allen, who I used to work with at Engine Yard, talking about Angular and doing animations in your UI with Angular and Sass. So it's been a lot of like really great talks, and I like that. I've also been trying to do similar to Camp Sass in that I don't want everything to just be about Sass, but somehow connected in some way. And so yeah, if you're in the San Francisco area, or if you're going to be in town and you want to speak, please let me know. Anything like within the front end or like web world is welcome. Yeah.
Do you have a particular date for the next event?
Not yet. So far we've been doing them kind of quarterly because mostly I've just been busy. But I do have a co-host. I have a co-organizer now, and I think like hopefully moving forward we can do them more often. His name's Mike Fowler, and he actually did the website for the Mixin. So.
Oh, great.
Big, huge thanks to him for doing that.
Speaking of, that's themixonsf.com. We've got that in our show notes.
Yeah, the Mixin SF. So yeah, I have my eyes on Heroku as the potential next host and sponsor, but we'll see if we can make that happen.
That's kind of fun. Are you intentionally going from spot to spot?
Yeah, I like having a different host each time. The local XXUX meetup does that, and they're the Women of UX meetup. I like that because if you're always going to the same place, there might be certain people that can't just make it to that place. Maybe they live far from that place. But by moving it around, I feel like it maybe opens up more opportunities for other people to come. And it's kind of nice to have like a different company like help support it. But after talking to Hampton a little bit, he gave me a lot of advice and feedback on how I've been doing things. I might try to have like a typical sponsor that generally does it, and then maybe every now and then if another sponsor wants to do it, we'll let them do it. But so yeah, we'll figure that out soon.
Yeah, I can certainly see the point of both, and especially if you're only doing it every few months.
Yeah.
Then it's kind of like a little mini camp just every couple months kind of thing. But yeah, we've been at Puppet Labs here in Portland for the last almost a year now, I guess, year in July. And yeah, there's certainly niceness about knowing the space and knowing what's at the space and what to expect of the space.
Yeah, so that's the tricky part, like not knowing what to expect when you come in and getting the laptop set up and all that. That's why I'm kind of thinking I might try to have a typical sponsor so I know like coming in at each time what the setup is like. Especially like if it could be Heroku, they have an amazing meeting space and can do recording and all that stuff.
Yeah,
so.
That's the same thing with Puppet. Is they've been upgrading even as we've been there, and now they have like little remote control cameras and like lapel microphones and like just like a small little production studio, and it's great. So we just can plug into that. We can broadcast on these Hangouts, and we've got them recorded, and people watch live, and it's a blast. So it's a lot of fun to do.
I'm pretty bummed out. Like I've tried a couple different times to record, and each time something has gone wrong. And so, if anyone is awesome at recording and wants to help me, let me know.
Yeah, a lot of it comes to the gear. Like if they have a good setup for it and you can just plug in and be done. I mean that's what we have a Puppet, which is just great. It's like we don't have to deal with any technical. It's there. You just start up on. They have a computer set up, so a whole lot of fun. So you talked about Eric Suzanne came over this last month, and I was again jealous I couldn't come out to San Francisco and catch both of those things. But it's so you've been doing some work with him on Susie. What's your involvement with that, and how's that been? How's the process been?
So, I am mostly there for moral support. No, I have a lot of ideas of what I would like, and when I want to lay out a page, and so most of my involvement is just sharing what I wish it would do, and but I don't really have the deep coding knowledge to actually build that. And so what I'm going to be doing a lot of going forward is maybe mocking things up the way I wish they worked, and then Eric said he could like take that and abstract it and turn it into Suzy awesomeness. So like right now I'm looking at display table as a layout option for Suzy, and like thinking through like how I would like for that to work. So hopefully that will be out fairly soon. But I got to do a lot of thinking around that.
Exactly.
Because I use display table quite often, and so it'd be nice if that was an option. Right now, I think
all the vertical centering that you have to do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I use that surprisingly a lot. And then
it's not surprising. I've been places that love that to death.
Yeah. I've also just small little documentation or typos or like I like did a little tiny CSS tweak yesterday to make the quote have hanging punctuation, so the like little things like that, which I know
the
are like
designer's eye.
Yeah, I know it's like super minor things, but like I love feeling like I'm part of it, even though I know I haven't done a lot of code for it. And so super stoked to have my name attached to that.
Well, that's the thing I hear a lot about open source is contribution doesn't have to always just be code. It can be visual. It can be, hey, your GitHub repo could use a much cooler .info page or something like that.
Yeah.
So there's lots of ways to get involved in, and what you're doing, being able to kind of beta test and work out some of those ideas in an actual production environment. I'm sure that's been extremely valuable for him.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah. Well, I just finally got into using Suzy 2.0. I just finally started a new project where I could dive in and do that, and so I'm kind of treading water as I'm trying to remember, we're trying to figure out. Okay, I remember how it used to work. Now, how does it work in the new one? So it's been neat. It's a completely different system as far as how the mix-ins are put together, but it certainly still has the same heart of what you're being able to create and do and work with semantic grids and those types of things. So it's been a lot of fun, to say the least. So let's wrap up with, you had some demo stuff that we wanted to show off. I want to get some time for that, and then I know we've got a couple questions that have popped in, and I want to get a chance to ask those as well. So what are you going to demo for us today?
So I'm going to show just very quickly a little bit of how our style guide prototyping is set up. There's a lot of magic that I don't understand in this, but it's awesome working with people that do, because they're so smart. But I can show you how quickly it is to kind of assemble a page together. So if you actually view our style guide on the web right now. So this is the components page. Our.
Oh, you're not sharing your screen yet.
Oh, ha. Imagine you will.
And I'm going to go ahead and tweet that link out if anyone wants to jump onto it and check it out as well.
Yeah. So this is our style guide. It's really, really rad. This style guide is actually the main attraction that made me want to come join this team. I thought it was beautiful and I wanted to work on it. So now I can. So yeah,
a lot of mentioned.
A lot of this stuff is like generated and awesome, and I'll show you very quickly what I mean by that. It's built on Angular, and it uses CoffeeScript and Grunt and Bower and Node Sass and like lots of awesome things. And I'm showing you the wrong screen. Here we go.
There we
So
go.
here's an example of one of our Sass files, and as you can see, this is not CSS at all. This is markup. So we can actually put Markdown or like HTML in our comments. And this is actually a pretty common thing you'll see in some other style guide generators that are out right now, like Style.co, for example. We can describe it and show what that markup would be. And then when you come to our style guide, we display based off of those comments, and so we can show the description, we can show the actual element, and the markup that generates that element.
Very nice.
So it's pretty cool, but the more fun part that
I like to say funner. Is I think the right word for that.
The funner part that I like to show is, so we have like different, right now you're viewing like the HTML. We also have where you can view the actual Angular like templating code that we use. And so here you see like it says like S1 feed comment with modifier. Like that way we don't have to drop in like entire chunks of markup. It's all
gotcha.
encapsulated in these tags. And so
directives, I think they call them.
Directives. Thank you. I'm still new to Angular, so so for example, I need a primary header. I just grab this guy, go over to. I have this indexed HTML page already set up. I can just drop that in here. Maybe I need, let's get this dark anchor here. And let's grab a couple feed items. So just grab this guy. Doop, doop, doop. And then we go view it, and it's all there. Everything that I just dropped in. And so like it can help people like really prototype screens like super, super fast. And we actually are going to be open sourcing all of this. It's not ready quite yet, but it will be open source. And we're even playing around with like bringing some of this stuff into Polymer, so you can actually drag and drop these elements and like tie it into real data. So it's pretty exciting. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I actually used Angular as what I picked when I was building a smaller kind of like prototyping framework like this as well. It's a really great little like front-facing language to do that, because you have all of the properties you can pass different values into, and then that gets actually put into the HTML, and it make changes. And hey, there's my face.
Oh, yeah. I figured I was going to show you that. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a really neat tool. And so, any idea of like how soon this is going to be coming out as something everyone can use?
I actually don't know. I can find out and update. Yeah, I just know it's just
I need a promise. I need to know.
Yeah. Well, like so we have to strip out any internal things that don't need to be in the open source, and I'm hoping it'll be in the next couple months, but I don't want to make any promises.
Well, it's a matter of a few months rather than a few years or like a couple
3
days.
years from now. Just kidding.
You are a future teller. That's incredible. All right, so a couple questions we had come in just to pay some fan homage. What would you consider the most underrated Sass plugin? Like, do you have a particular plugin that you use all the time that you wish everyone knew about and used? Besides Susie.
Oh, man.
Hey, that's not underrated. That thing is awesome.
I know. But I do think more people could use it for what they're doing. I have to be honest, I don't really use a whole lot of third-party plugins. Like, I was using, and I still use a lot of Compass, and that's not really underrated at all. Or overrated. You know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, underrated.
It's common. People use it a lot. But like, I use Breakpoint. I don't really use a whole lot of other of the things that are out there. Like I'm kind of a roll your own type of person.
totally with you on
But
that.
yeah, but I do have some ideas of things I'd like to uh, like the basic things I would want like in the typical web app. And so like I've actually been talking a little bit with Eric about how that might play into Susie or be a companion to Susie. But yeah, I don't. I have to be honest. I don't really use a lot of what's out there. I just kind of write my own
Yeah.
thing.
That, and which is perfectly fine. Now you just have to start writing them and then putting them as gems that the rest of us can use.
Yeah, yeah. I should share my toys.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Um, Another good question is, what pet peeves do you have with CSS? Do you think Sass really helps out with? Like, do you have any particular big pet peeves that Sass has fixed for you?
Mostly just the repetition stuff. Like, I guess like my big thing, like before SAS, I always wanted to organize my files the way I wanted, but then you only want one output at the end. And I love that with SAS, I can do whatever I want and organize however I want my folder structure to be, or have a single file per each individual component, and then it all just outputs as one file. Like that's probably the hugest thing for me. Um, Beyond that, I guess like colors, like having to pull up Photoshop to get maybe a slightly darker version of a blue, or trying to determine what the inverse of something is, or any of that stuff. It's just really nice that Sass can do a lot of that for me. And then, like if you don't really like what Sass did, you can always just, then override it with what
Yeah,
you want. But it's kind of nice letting Sass do the grunt work, like from the get-go for a lot of that stuff. So, like, yeah, colors is a big one.
very nice. So I assume you've seen Scott Callum's Color Talk.
I have actually haven't seen his talk, but I'm aware of it, and I know I need to sit and watch it.
It's quite good. Yeah, he's got a color schemer. I think is the name of the GitHub repo. It's really really quite cool what you can do with colors and Sass. So you definitely have a good one there. Do you have? Are you planning to be speaking anywhere or attending anywhere, any conferences in the near future?
Yeah, so actually, I leave tomorrow to go to Columbia, South Carolina for Converge, and I'm super excited about that. I'm just going to be talking about refactoring UI with Sass and style guides.
Nice.
And then a little bit later this month, I've got one in Latvia. And I'm actually doing two talks. I'm doing one about the same thing, and then the other one is kind of particularly focused on the whole idea of single source of truth. And so I want to talk a
And
little.
what is that? Because it
So
sounds interesting.
yeah, I actually thought it was an internal phrase we used here until I heard it used in Rome, and I was like, oh, I guess this is more common than I thought. But it's the whole dry principle. It's like rather than having repetition, just have one source of truth. And we use it for a lot of things. We talk about it with like our design mocks. We talk about it with our CSS, our code. Like one big example we have is like for colors and like type sizes. It's nice to have just one central location for that, but we actually have a native Android app, we have a native iPhone app, we have a web app. Like how can all these different platforms tie into the same system?
Hmm.
And so we're actually working through that right now, and it's one of my, I guess, like most intriguing things that I have on my plate right now that I'm like really interested in trying to solve. And so I want to talk a little bit about that and like what we're doing now and where we think, it might go in the future.
So, like, you have a single color variable somewhere that you could change,
Yeah,
and it changes your website, the iOS app, and the Android app, and anything
yeah.
else comes down the
But
road.
like thinking about like doing that in a safe way that you're not breaking things. Yeah.
I was going to change the variables over here and see what happens.
Maybe just up this font size to 200 and see what happens. Yeah.
Oh my. Well, it sounds like where's Latvia? Is that Eastern European, or am I completely way
Yes,
off?
I had to actually look it up because I had to admit I didn't I was like, oh, I have
And then how did you find that too? That sounds like a really random.
they reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to come, so I was like, sure, I would love to go to a place I'd never heard of before.
Completely.
So yeah, I have that.
And how do I get connected with those types of people?
You know, I wish I actually knew how I ended up getting connected. Yeah, I guess I noticed it seems like the more you speak, the more you get asked to speak. So
It's cyclical like that.
yeah.
Yeah, there was a listener that was in Italy that would comment occasionally and whatnot. And I was like, anytime you want me to come out to Italy and like talking to meet up, and you want to obviously pay for the entire experience, I'd be more than happy to come.
Yeah,
Well, it sounds like you have a lot of fun ahead of you, and it sounds like Salesforce is kicking some butt out there. I'm really excited to see that
it
you guys
really.
are open sourcing this tool that looks really amazing. I mean, I think you're probably have accomplished 20 times more than I was able to accomplish in kind of that same direction. So I'm really looking forward to kind of digging into that and seeing how you solve some of those problems. So thank you again for coming on today at such a short notice. And I know we've been like planning for the last like 3 or 4 weeks trying to figure out when we can get you to fit in. So this is perfect that you're available. So I'm really thankful you're able to come by.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Not a problem, Gina. And hopefully I will run into you at a conference or something soon in Latvia or Brazil or something. You never know.
Yeah.
So anyway, thanks for everyone for tuning in, and check our old episodes at youtube.com/sassbites, as well as you can, obviously, if you're watching this one, you might already be there, but that's where they are. So thanks again, and we'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.